Sarah Grace is a powerful and dynamic individual who has spent over a decade merging her career as a paramedic in some of California's busiest 911 systems with her innate gifts as a clairvoyant medium, medical intuitive, and energy healer. Sarah has spent years studying her both physical and energy anatomy while applying her skills in critical settings to thousands of patients as they dealt with life and death emergencies. Please put your hands together for Sarah Grace.
I want to hug you again. Thank you. Hi, everybody. You can hear me. So wonderful. Can you just feel the energy and the yumminess in this room? Love it. It is amazing. I was a speaker early last year, and that was my first introduction to this community. Since that time, I've had the honor of getting to know a lot of you guys, and it's just such a beautiful and intricate support system and network. So it's an honor to be invited back to speak. And what I'd love to talk to you about is really ways that we can blossom within our own gifts and energetics. And so I'm going to just start by kind of refreshing a little bit on who I am and what it is that I've experienced to get me to this point. And then we'll kind of move forward into empowering you, because I love to tell people how amazing they are, which is awesome. As JG said, I've been highly clairvoyant and empathic since I was 7, and I was raised in the Midwest, pre-internet, so there was like not really any way to connect to the outside world. And I was raised in a real conservative area, and so when I started to come out with it, it was shamed and condemned. And so essentially I have the ability to kind of perceive auras and feel feelings of other people and thoughts and just kind of that knowingness. And from what I know now, there's so many of us, right? But when you're 7, growing up in a really rural populated area, I felt very isolated. When I said something to my family, I was shamed and condemned and kind of said, you know, that's not okay, don't talk about that. So I swallowed it, and I tried to bury it for the next 25 or so years. And essentially, my fear was that there was something mentally wrong with me, right? Because hearing spirit or hearing voice or seeing spirits and things like that, it just didn't fit into the paradigm of what the nuclear family concept at the time was. So I ran around for a long, long time, the next 25 years, really self-sabotaging and just trying to kind of cope and make sense of a lot of the excess stimulus that I was facing. Eventually, I went through a lot of different wild and crazy antics, which you guys can read about here. Yeah, a lot of you have already read this, so you know me very well. I was crazy and wild indeed. But I made it through, and I finally became a paramedic after listening to my intuition, you know, kind of knocking me on the head a number of times. Then I finally surrendered. I had a lot of fear around it. You know, being a paramedic is obviously a big deal. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and you know, we make life and death critical decisions. And what I didn't realize at the time, and I think sometimes we trip ourselves up, you know, because we think of the end goal, and it can seem so insurmountable or so far away, while not realizing that it's like a step-by-step process, right? We start at the beginning, and then we can learn how to work with whatever that is, and then eventually we blossom into being able to handle our fullest capacity. And so I started out as a basic level EMT in South Central LA, which was an amazing experience, and have been a paramedic now for 15 years. So what happened essentially was the spirits and energies just started working through me on these 911 calls. It was nothing I was trying to do. I was still kind of trying to closet it and not say anything about it. But after a decade of being that paramedic who was always there the last 10 or 15 minutes of life, and having the honor of transitioning, I think of it now as midwifing. I was essentially midwifing into the next, level, really. And so I had the absolute honor of being able to witness many, many people transition. So in addition to dealing with the physical logistics that a paramedic deals with, I was watching the chakra systems release and the soul go out the crown of the head, and perhaps the deceased loved ones come in, and we're sitting there doing CPR, and I'm managing the scene and the family and dealing with all of that stuff. And so I did that for a decade. And after enough time, I finally was like, okay, I surrender. What is this? Why do I perceive this way? I was still scared to come out or say anything because, again, of that stigma. There's a real societal stigma about people with high sense perception, right? I mean, the quintessential Western medicine catchphrase for crazy is hearing voices, and that's one of our gifts, And so, being in a very masculine 911 system environment, it just added to my fear. But after enough time, I was just like, you know what, screw it. This is who I am, this is how I perceive things, and I want to get educated. And so I decided, I started with Reiki, I looked into different medical, intuitive branches and shamanic practice and a lot of different aspects I started to train myself in. And over time, my intuition and spirit just kind of led me into what it is now, which I have a private practice, and it's thriving and it's flourishing, and I'm grateful. And so just since we put the book out right after I first spoke here, it's quadrupled, and actually I'm just amazed to say it's gone international. And it's thank you. Yes, there's one aspect of me as the communicator. That's fine. And what I take it as, really, it's a sign, it's a symptom that we're ready as a collective to finally have the conversation about living with high sense perception, right? So let me ask you guys, high sense perception, energetic awareness, psychic ability, how many in here, raise your hands if you see energy. Anybody else see energies? There we go, wonderful, you can look around. Okay, anybody here? Anybody here? Yep. And it can come in as voice, it can come in as music, radio tones, all kinds of different things, right? How about feeling? There we go. We always get the big ones on the feeling. And then there's a lot of just how about the knowing? You just know things, right? Or perhaps we have the ability to just kind of be in different locations, or just kind of like, it's more of a knowing. We'll just kind of leave it at that for the purpose of this talk. But did you see the raise of hands? Virtually everybody in this room experiences to some capacity some sort of extrasensory perception. And so what I've come to understand, you guys, like, yes, I went through a lot, like overcoming my shadow and really looking at my own self-woundingness and all the things that I did to myself as a coping mechanism just to make myself feel okay. And I'm here to represent and to exemplify that we can not only overcome the difficult aspects of our lives and what we've been through, but we can thrive, right? And I've heard a lot of this today with, oh, okay, so how do we do that? We do that by listening to this inner knowing, right? And I've heard that so much today, which is so perfect because I really didn't know exactly what I was going to say when I got up here, but intuitively I was like, right, we're going to talk about that personal accountability, right? Because it's within that aspect of personal accountability that we have the choice, which I heard earlier today, to are we going to look at our circumstance through the victim lens, as this is being done to me, or are we going to take a more empowered approach, this is being done for me, right? That I found in my own experience was the crux. And a lot of the people that I work with now, I'm finding that single aspect of the willingness to really, really get honest with ourselves about how it is we're showing up and how it is we're viewing this outside of ourselves tangible reality, and then kind of finding some spaciousness. So when it comes to personal accountability, like, what does that mean to you guys when you hear that? There's a lot of different ways to have personal accountability.
Reflecting on your own actions, how it may affect others as well as yourself.
Right, so reflecting on actions and behaviors, understanding that our behaviors affect other people, right? Do you guys know that you are powerful creators? We're not really taught that in elementary school, right? No, we're taught to put our power outside of ourselves. And it can be a really scary concept, right? To think, whoa, wait a second, you mean I'm creating this? No, I wouldn't do that, right? And I loved, it was so eloquently said earlier today, we have our own individual choice, and then we have our reactiveness to the choices that are made for us, right? And so in this space, yeah.
For me, it's the responsibility of knowing, and that is so overbearing sometimes.
Right. So you're saying that the stimulus is a lot for you, the knowingness is a lot for you?
Knowing something before.
Yeah, it can be, absolutely.
And then not knowing what to do about it.
Exactly. And so that's kind of the point of this, because a lot of us perceive things in different ways, right? The way that I perceive energy is going to be different than JG, and there's none are better or less than the other. It's all of our own individual blueprint. And so what I'm here today is to really just honor and recognize you for being energetic beings, for being powerful creators, for being like, you've made it to this point, right? And now we're coming into a new space, a new year. And so when we're looking at what is it that you want to create in this new year, do you want to come from these old patterns of feeling overwhelmed by the stimulus, or coming from a lack mentality of not enough, whether it's finance or health or community or friendship? That's our choice. And so we're going to do a brief exercise in just one moment about how can we find a little bit more spaciousness, because it's like, yeah, those are great words, Sarah. But when it comes to the practical application, right? That's where we get kind of tripped up. Sometimes we just don't know how, right? We just don't know how to really feel empowered, because all of us have the victim mentality archetype, and we're taught from a young age to put our power elsewhere. And of course it's going to be natural and scary, because yeah, the thought of failing can be very scary. What can be even more terrifying? The thought of success, infinite power, like in our own capacity, right? Each and every one of you guys is extraordinary, and we all bring different contributions. And so as we are willing to just open, right, more and more, and know that the ego will come and it will kind of put up a fuss, being willing to continue to open more and more into creating in the next year and beyond a life of infinite capacity. Now is the time. I would not be standing here, you guys. The book would have not gone international. We're looking at potentially a television series. The world is ready. There's millions of us. There's nothing wrong with having high sense perception, right? And so now we can bring it out of the closet. We can take the fear away. We can have that grounded, conscious, integrated conversation about, okay, so you see, I understand. How does it present to you? Where does the information come in? Do you hear it in the right or the left ear? Is the voice masculine or feminine? What language is it in? Okay, do you see auras? Do you see grid infrastructures? Do you see the color of feelings? Do you see the mental process? Right? The more we know, the more we feel powerful in it. As an empath, most everybody in here raised their hand. Did you know there's 3 kinds? One is the feeling, the physical body empath, where somebody sits down next to you, they have knee pain, all of a sudden you get knee pain, right? Then there's the mental empath, where somebody comes in and their mind's spinning out, and all of a sudden your mind's spinning out. You're like, well, what the hell? I wasn't thinking that, right? Or even this one may be the most predominant, the feelers, the people who emotionally take on, right? It can be overwhelming. This is a giant, it's all energy. It's all exquisite energy, and so we're all kind of moving through this consistent field, right? So how do we get to know our own stuff? Well, there's a lot of different ways: meditation, exercise, being outside, right? And this is going to go back to personal accountability and how we're going to talk about that. But we'll get to more of that in just a second. For just this moment, if you don't mind closing down your eyes, I'd like to just do a very brief exercise that can help. We've talked a lot about the intense energy of the last week, right? And there's a lot going on. And so being feelers as we are, or knowers or seers, how is it that we figure out what's ours? Okay, so you can just take a deep breath. You can just relax your shoulders. We're not going to be doing a huge thing here. Feeling your seat on the chair, your feet on the floor. And so I would love for you to draw into your attention and awareness any aspect of energy, feeling, thought, situation in your life that you've been working with that's been of a denser frequency, something that's been more challenging for you in the last week or two. Just noticing very briefly how it feels. Where do you notice it in your body? Are there any thoughts or emotions associated with it? And then I am going to ask a question that I invite you to ask, and I would really encourage you to take the very first yes or no answer that you're provided. Again, tuning into this frequency. Is this mine? If the answer is no, and it may come in a thought, it may come in a knowing, it may come in a voice. If the answer is no, very simply say, return to sender. With love. More oftentimes than not, we can feel a nearly immediate shift. This can be a very quick and easy, powerful tool that you can utilize in your everyday to begin to connect to what your own energy field feels like. Just because we have the capacity to see, hear, feel, and know a greater amount of stimulus than perhaps the average person does not mean we need to be victimized or overwhelmed with it. One last brief thing before I have you open your eyes. I would really encourage you to think of a scenario in your life, or a person or a place or a situation that is a 100% yes. Everything about you is like, yes. Look at y'all smiling. So cute. You feel it? That's you connecting to you. That's you remembering your true essence of infinite, divine, infinite and divine wisdom, whimsy, happiness, joy, lightness, fun. Oftentimes we spend a lot of time on the other side in the stuff that we don't want. How often do we allow ourselves into this space? So now I welcome you to reopen your eyes and re-engage here. Ooh, you're all sparkly. What's that? Pretty amazing, huh? And here's the thing, it's not me doing anything to you. It's you doing it for yourself. I am of the mindset that we are all our own greatest teachers and healers. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we lose our way. So I don't heal anyone. But what I do is hold the mirror up. And I hold the trail map. And I'm like, you're here. You want to go here? Well, maybe consider these things. Because it's all, with a lot of it is coming from within. So coming back, how'd that feel? Good? Fun, huh? And here's the thing, I would totally encourage you guys to do that a couple of times a day, right? Because it's like you'll be shopping. You're at Whole Foods, right? And you're like going in next to whatever you're getting. You're getting your celery or your kombucha or whatever. And say you're doing great and you're having a good thought. And all of a sudden you walk by this person and perhaps, you know, it's just somebody who's angry or somebody who you just kind of could feel. And all of a sudden like transfers over. And we've all had that experience, right? In different capacity, right? You can instantly, is this mine? Nope, return to sender. And then the whole thing can be over that fast. So we don't have to go into a whole thing of like, oh, I'm being inundated with this energy and I gotta ground and protect, and that's exhausting. I spent years doing that, you know? That's cool. All that ground bubble protect stuff is definitely a good starter, right? And then as we begin to understand our own power and remember our own innate wisdom and gifts, you guys, there is nothing that is not source. There is nothing that is not spiritual. It is all energy. It is all us, and we all have the capacity to connect at our greatest and most infinite level of creation. So why not? We've shrunk back, we've hidden, right? But as we reconnect to ourselves and as we allow ourselves to create and to dance and to speak, we become ignited. And we don't even have to say anything because we can just walk, we can just be. And people are like, damn, what's up with that chick? Right? And then they come and they'll be like, so, what's going on? And I'll be like, so, what's going on? Really, we're all thirsting for that connectedness, right? We all want safety and love and community. We have that in this room. We have this outside of this room. Aren't we blessed? And so now, just think of where we can go when we have it within. Anything you want. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Right? But again, what I've heard today is a lot of this self-connectedness, a lot of allowing ourselves to really start to dream again. Okay? We're going to do a question and answer after, I believe. Is that right? Okay, I'm going to do-si-do for a second. Because I want you to be heard on the video, so we'll hand you up. Okay. Yeah. I'm wondering how I'm doing on time. If we wanted to start doing a Q&A, so we could.
Sure, let's do a Q&A.
Q&A?
I'll grab the microphone.
Come up here, you cutie.
Oh, I am cute.
You are cute.
There's a few things
I don't
about
sing, but-
Sarah that, I mean, I really, the book is a really fun book, and.
How many have read it? A lot of you guys have read it.
Okay, over half. Yeah, she definitely had some adventures in her early life.
I was a little minx.
So, but the thing that, there's a couple of things I find fascinating about how you supplemented your college education. But if I'm right next to someone in a tragic car accident and they're about ready to die, and you're there, and then you have this sense perception that their soul is ready to leave, or that's their choice, or whatever's going on. My first question is, what's it like, for how many deaths have you witnessed, and what is that like just on a gut? And what was it like when you first started, and then how did you transition to that? And then if a few of you want to ask questions, start thinking about what your questions might be.
Do I need that? I got this.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, thanks. Death is a wonderful question. Death is a pretty trippy concept, right? Because the ego thinks it rocks and it's just is everything. That's what the ego thinks. And so the concept of death is the end of ego, so the ego freaks out. Like, what? And so initially, I mean, being a new medic, like obviously just like anything, you got to get your feet wet and kind of run some calls. So the first few times I saw dead bodies, I was like, it just doesn't, it's weird to be like, okay, he was just talking and now it's a cadaver. Because there's a big difference energetically, right? There's just no soul essence left and it's just a corpse, right? And so that tripped me out for the first 6 months or so. How many deaths have I actively witnessed? Probably between 50 and 60. And so that was amazing, and like I said before, such an honor. As a paramedic, we're trained for the mechanical aspects of things, and so my brain works really, really fast, and the way that I perceive energy in just my everyday reality is like I'm standing in front of a wall of television screens, and all of them are giving me different data and information simultaneously. Fortunately, I have a paramedic brain that can run like 4 different scenarios at any given time. I'm always thinking like mild, moderate, severe, and extremis, right? And that's just the way it works for me. And so I'm always thinking like that. So just like anything, there's a learning curve, and it did trip me out at first. I was still closeted with my energetic capacity for the first many, many years of my career. A lot of my coworkers could feel that I was doing something on scene, but I didn't even know what I was doing. I wasn't trying to do anything. It was just coming through me, and I was like, whoa, And so I was not really open to witnessing it. I'd see it, but I was still kind of like, I don't know what to do with that. Here, let me go home and eat some ice cream,
Yeah.
Like, let me just try to cope with this somehow. For me, it was running. Let me go run 25 miles and just try to be okay. And so the more proficient I got, the more inquisitive I got, and the more empowered I became, the more I understood what was happening. So I'm looking at the soul essence, right, which is our truth. It's our soul. It's our spirit, right? And that aspect, leaving the body, looked very different in different situations. Traumatic was a lot of the soul kind of like being in shock, where I could see them outside of the body, standing next to the body, trying to get back into the body.
Wow.
And so that, where they're trying to figure out like what's going on, Oftentimes I would see celestials, angels, and it was always very interesting. And loved ones would come in from time to time, but usually traumatic, where they were in shock, was more angelic celestial. I didn't know if I was just soothed and to kind of calm the soul before they transitioned and went away from my view. A lot of the long-term hospice, the declaration of death, or somebody who's been, COPD long-term or CHF or whatever they're dealing with for a prolonged period of time, they may have been aware that death was coming. And at that moment, oftentimes with them, I would see loved ones that have crossed. And so you guys, you're cool, you're covered no matter what. Like, we're not alone ever. Right? Right? And here's the other thing. Like, death to me now, the way that I view death is celebration. Because it's really a graduation. Because we remember once we leave this finite experience, right? Where we have filters, right? And so that's how I view death now, is as celebration. Here's the thing, too. I'm so not, like, special. There's millions of us, hundreds of thousands of medics and firefighters and nurses and hospice workers and people who actively participate in calming and soothing the physical vessel as the soul prepares to leave, right? And so this is what I'm finding, and this will bring us back to kind of the personal accountability and what we want to create. Understanding that we have community and connectedness, that these beautiful aspects of soul transition and energetic awareness and empowerment, those types of things, we can begin to come out and figure out ways that we can feel empowered within ourselves and then take it back into our platform in life. Not everybody's meant to, like, have an awakening experience and then become like a Reiki healer, right? And we'd all be Reiki healers just doing Reiki on each other, right? We wake up, we have this empowerment experience, and we remember our infinite capacity and how we want to contribute and how best we can serve. And that may be in the accounting firm. That may be at home with your children, right? That may be whatever it is for you, right? And that is how it works. It's a tapestry. It's not one specific way of being this with high sense perception. It's what's unique to you. And do you have a question?
Oh, I do have a question.
Okay, yeah.
Keep going.
Okay, we're out of time? Okay.
Put your hands together, please. Sarah Grace.